College football records that might be unbreakable. Good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. That's right, it is me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Also, in addition to that as well, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I post these pointless, barely watchable videos almost every single day of the year. We have a call-in show every Tuesday and Thursday night at 9. We do live streams on the weekends. We have a really good time here. Great college football community around this channel, fan bases from coast to coast. Join the party, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and let's get into it. Now, every morning at some point, I'll take an hour or so, and there's about 6 or 7 sports websites or college football websites that I'll go to, and I'll sort of, peruse around, look around a little bit and see if anything catches my eye. Obviously, if there's any sorts of breaking news or whatever, or any types of articles maybe that have been written that might be interesting for me to then come on YouTube and talk about, especially in the off season. It just becomes really difficult to come up with material to talk about in the world of college football, honestly. And the other day, I think it's on ESPN. I'm going to put it up in a minute. They had an article, college football's 10 most unbreakable records, or the 10 most unbreakable records in college football. And I clicked on it and I scrolled through and read. And now some of the records I was familiar with. They're sort of kind of widely known. You'll be familiar with some of them too when I put them up. Some of the other ones, if you'd asked me, I'd had no idea. For one of them, for example, was who holds the record for the most return touchdowns in a single game. So you probably are familiar with like some of the all-time great kick returners, Devin Hester at Miami, or whoever you want to talk about there. But who has the most kick return touchdowns in one game? And how many is it, do you think? It's 3 in one game. Antonio Perkins, I believe it was, from Oklahoma. Anyway, so like if you'd asked me that at like a trivia night, I would have had no idea. So there was some interesting stuff in there. But the angle I want to take here is ESPN is referring to these as unbreakable records. So we're going to go through this list here. I'm going to put it up on the screen, and I'll give you some of kind of my thoughts and opinions a little bit on these records as we go through. But what I really want to know from y'all in the comment section with these particular records is, are they unbreakable? I think there are some in here that are unbreakable for a variety of reasons. Some of them, though, I could picture being broken at some point in the future. So here you go. Let's get into it. Again, this is from ESPN.com from a few days ago. Looks like an article by Chris Lowe, I guess. I'm going to skip through some of the just talking stuff and get straight to the records. Now, this is one that I think most college football fans are probably aware of, because anytime now that a team goes on any sort of significant winning streak, this record gets brought up and mentioned. And obviously, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're familiar with it, but I'm talking about the all-time winning streak, which of course sits at 47 games. This was accomplished by Oklahoma, I believe, back in the 50s. It tells us down here in the article. Yeah, Bud Wilkinson, legendary coach of Oklahoma. This winning streak occurred in the 50s. The Sooners bulldozed their way to 47 consecutive wins, a streak that began in 1953 and lasted most of 5 seasons. Just unbelievable. Now, I do think this is an unbreakable record for a variety of reasons. Number one, winning 47 games in a row is really, really hard. Ask any college football coach, they'll tell you winning 1 game in a row is really, really hard. But the idea that you could win 47 straight, I don't think this record's ever getting broken. The main reason, other than it's just hard to win games, period, never mind 47 in a row, we play a lot more games now than we used to. Specifically, the playoff and the playoff expansion, I believe, is what is going to prevent this record from ever being broken ever again. Now, when this record was set, they were playing less games in the regular season than we play now. And then all you had was then a bowl game that was basically a random matchup at the end of the season. It wasn't completely random. You had bowl conference tie-ins and things. But in other words, if you were the number 1 team in the country at the end of the regular season, you didn't get matched up against the number 2 team automatically in a bowl matchup. You might be playing the 8 team or the 15 team or the 25 team, whatever. So you were playing less games and more importantly, even less postseason games against highly ranked teams. So Oklahoma, and this isn't to take away from Oklahoma's record, by the way, because everybody that was playing college football in the 50s was playing under the same model. So they had the same opportunity to win these games that Oklahoma did, and they didn't do it. So I'm not taking away from Oklahoma's accomplishment here at all. But the reality is, in today's college football, if you're good enough to make the playoffs, you're going to have to win 3, 4, 5 games against top 10 teams in a row to win the national title, right? And everyone's going to lose except for one team. Like every 12 teams make the playoffs. 11 of those teams are going to lose their last game of the year. It just becomes increasingly difficult now because of the number of regular season games moving to 12. Conference championships make it 13. And now to go undefeated in a season, you'd have to go 16 or 17 and 0 or 0. And so in order to break this record of 47 games, not only would you have to win back-to-back national titles, you'd most likely have to win 3 national titles in a row, and you'd have to be undefeated in at least 2 of those seasons. So let's kind of break it down here. Let's say you start out some particular season not very well and you lose a few games, and so you're not going to make the playoffs, but then maybe you go on a run at the end of the year, and let's say you win your last 5 games of the year, okay? But you don't make the playoffs. You make maybe a mid-level bowl game and you win that bowl game. So you've got a 5-game winning streak, then you win your bowl game. That would make it a 6-game winning streak. Let's say the next season you go undefeated and win the national title at 16-0. That's the 6 wins you had from the previous to end the previous season plus 16. You're at 22. If you do the same thing next year and go 16-0 again, you're now at 38. You've gone back to back 16-0 seasons, and you're still not even close to this 47-game winning streak. You're at 38 wins because we're assuming you won like 6 games to close out the season prior to the 2 natties. So you're at 38. You're still, what is that? 9 games away from even tying the record. So you win 6 games to close out a season. You then go 16-0 to win a natty, 16-0 again to win a natty. That's 38 wins. You then have to start next season 9-0 just to tie this 47-game streak. I don't see that happening. Shout out to Oklahoma. I think they're going to have this record for a long, long time. If by the way, I'll try to remember to post the link to this article in the description down below. They list some other facts and sort of interesting tidbits about a lot of these records, like who else has come close. You might see here on the screen now, they talk about Miami in the early 2000s, Southern Cal in the mid 2000s, different things, other sort of winning streaks. The longest sort of like recent winning streak that we've seen was Georgia. They won 29 straight. And that set the record for an SEC team. So, and that's nowhere near Oklahoma's 47 or 48 wins, whatever. Georgia would have had to basically double that almost to surpass that record. And again, that's one of the longest streaks over the last 5 to 10 years, the 28-29 game streak, whatever it was that Georgia had in 21, 22, and 23 before losing in the SEC championship game in 23. So I don't think that record's ever being broken. Barry Sanders, and I got to admit something here. Barry Sanders is one of my all-time favorite football players, but I really didn't become a Barry Sanders fan or see much of Barry Sanders until he was in the NFL with the Lions. And this is going to be hard for some younger viewers maybe to understand. But Barry Sanders played in the mid to late 80s. I think he broke these records in 1988, if I remember right. Does the article mention that? I'm sure it does. And 1988. In the 80s, you were lucky as a college football fan if there was 3 or 4 games on a Saturday. In other words, it's not like it is now where almost every single game is on every single week, right? You might have had one game that was broadcast just local. Like I grew up in the Southeast United States in Georgia. So the way the like SEC thing would work is they would have one SEC game on at noon, but it was a regional broadcast. So like I lived in Georgia, I would see the Georgia game at noon. But people that lived in Alabama, they couldn't see the Georgia game. They were seeing the Alabama game at noon. And then at 3 or 3:30, there was a national SEC game that would come on. And then on ABC, maybe there would be one national Big Ten game that came on at 3:30. And ESPN was sort of in its early phases of broadcasting games here in the 80s. Maybe they had like one Thursday night game and a couple of games on a Saturday. But the point is, Barry Sanders played for Oklahoma State. I lived in Georgia. There weren't very many Oklahoma State games coming on TV in 1988 here in the state of Georgia. So I hate it. It's a regret that I have. I would have loved. I've obviously gone back and seen all the highlights, and I knew about this record ahead of time too. You probably did too. But unbelievable season by Barry Sanders. I'll hit some of the highlights here. NCAA record of 2,628 yards rushing. That's unbelievable right there. But that was done in 11 games. 11. Back then, bowl game statistics didn't count towards your season total. So if you go on to continue to read here, Oklahoma State played in the Holiday Bowl that year. He had another 222 yards in the Holiday Bowl. So if they would have been counting bowl stats back then, Barry Sanders would have had 2,850 yards rushing in 12 games. 12. And again, you got to remember, expanded playoff now, we're playing 15, 16 games, some teams are. Even if you make the conference championship game, and that's as far as you go, that's a 13th game, and then a bowl game was 14. 2,850 yards in 12 games, officially 2,628 yards in 11 games because they didn't count the bowl stats. Ashton Jeanty last year, as good as he was, right? Ashton Jeanty. Didn't come close to breaking this record. He had 2,601 yards, but he played in 14 games. So he played in 3 more games than Barry Sanders did officially. Again, Barry Sanders' record, 2,628 yards in 11 games. Ashton Jeanty last year was one of the best seasons we've seen in a long time. Less than that, 2,601 in 14 games. So Jeanty played 3 more games than Barry Sanders' official record of 26-28. And if you count, again, the bowl stats for Barry Sanders, which didn't count back then, Barry Sanders, 2,850 yards in 12 games. Ashton Jeanty last year, 250 yards less than that in 14 games. Just an unbelievable record. Barry Sanders averaged 238 yards per game over the course of the season. Ashton Jeanty, again, as a comparison, averaged 185. So Barry Sanders averaged 50 yards more per game in 1988 than Ashton Jeanty did last year. It's absolutely unbelievable. This one is also one that I think will never be broken for some of the same reasons of Oklahoma's win streak. You play so many games now, particularly in the postseason, you can lose some. Maybe you finish 6th. This is an unbreakable record, I think. Bobby Bowden at Florida State, number of top 5 finishes in a row, 14. Unbelievable. Now, back then, the AP poll was what we were mostly going by. You didn't have a playoff committee or even a BCS during a lot of this time period here. But this says the remarkable consistency of Bobby Bowden could be the most impressive thing. His Florida State teams finished in the top 5 of every AP poll from 1987 to 2000. 14 seasons in a row, finishing in the top 5. Absolutely unbelievable. Alabama might be popping into your mind, right? Oh, I wonder how many times did Alabama do it? It tells us here in this article. And look, Alabama had a legendary run. There's no doubt about it. And Bama won more natties in their run than Bobby Bowden did at Florida State in his run. That's also true. And, in the end, I guess that maybe that matters more, especially if you're an Alabama fan. You can use that as a bragging point. But it tells us here about Saban at some point. Alabama won 6 national titles under Nick Saban. His longest run of top 5 seasons, though, 5. So Nick Saban finished in the top 5 years in a row. That's amazing. Bobby Bowden, 14 years in a row, finishing in the top 5. Absolutely unbelievable. Here's some rushing records here brought to you by Oklahoma once again from back in the day, this time in the 70s. Barry Switzer, offensive coordinator of the wishbone, which sort of morphed into the triple option a little bit later in the 80s, an I formation version of the wishbone a little bit. In 1971, Oklahoma averaged 472 yards rushing per game. That's unbelievable. There's teams in college football right now that don't average 470 yards a game of total offense. There's a lot of teams that don't average 472 yards of total offense. Oklahoma, 472 yards of rushing per game in the 1971 season. This is unbelievable. The last team to even come within 50 yards of that, another Oklahoma team in 1987, and they averaged 428, 50 yards off the pace. No team in the past 30 years has even had 400 yards rushing per game. This record's never getting broken. I mean, teams obviously throw the ball way more now than they did in the 70s for sure when this record was set, but even more than they did in the 80s when Oklahoma came close with the 420 yards per game. But there are teams around now that don't throw the ball. Think of your triple option teams like Army, Navy, whoever else, right? They don't come anywhere close to this, and they're dominant ground games. They don't come anywhere close. That record's never getting broken. It'd be hard to break that record in the video game. Like if you set out to break that record in NCAA 25 or whatever the video game is, and you picked some loaded team with a great rushing attack and the best running back in the game, you'd be hard pressed to average 470 something yards rushing per game over the course of a season in a damn video game, never mind real life. I don't think that record's getting broken. I hope this record gets broken by somebody, because this is a hilarious record here. This one brought to you by the Florida Gators. But Florida fans, who remembers John Reaves? I'll admit I don't. Again, this is one I would have had no idea about at all. John Reaves, a Florida quarterback in 1969, threw 9 interceptions in one game. One game. Now, first of all, I don't think anybody would be allowed to throw 9 interceptions anymore. You'd get the yank after 5, 6, 7 interceptions, wouldn't you? Eventually, you just have to put somebody else in. What's weird about this is it's kind of a Brett Favre situation. You know, for a long time, Brett Favre owned the NFL interception record, but he also held the touchdown record and a bunch of yardage record. Like, he was a really good quarterback mostly. But he threw the ball to the wrong team all the time. In fact, more times than any other NFL quarterback in history at the time. Same was true with John Reaves. He had a great season in 1969 statistically, but not in this one game here against Auburn, where he had 9 interceptions and 66 pass attempts. In fact, when Reaves left Florida in 1971, he was college football's all-time leading passer with 7,549 yards. It was a first-round draft pick in the NFL. So I don't know what happened to John Reaves on this particular day in 1969 against Auburn, but he just couldn't help himself from throwing the ball to the other team. 9 interceptions in one game, the NCAA record. This is one that most of you should know. Alabama fans will know it for sure. Derrick Thomas's sack record. This will never be broken. Derrick Thomas is one of the most dominant defensive players of all time in both college and in the pros. An unbelievable player. Speaking of video games, watching Derrick Thomas, particularly at the college level, seemed like a video game. He was so much bigger, better, faster, stronger than everyone else on the field. It was unbelievable to see. I was lucky enough to see some of this. This is more of a recent record here. Derrick Thomas was a generational pass rusher. He once had 7 sacks in an NFL game. That's also still a record. As a senior in Alabama in 1988, he had 27 sacks in one season. It's almost 3 a game. You got to remember, again, they didn't play 15, 16 games a year back then like they play now. They played 10 or 11 or 12, 10, 11 or 12, depending on how good you were, bowl game wise or whatever the case. 27 sacks, 39 tackles for loss. How is that not a record? Is there somebody that record's not on here, but I should have looked it up. Somebody look it up and let us know in the comments. What's the record for most tackles for loss in a season? He had 39 tackles for loss, and that's not even the record they're talking about. 27 sacks in a season. Of course, he earned SEC Defensive Player of the Year. What else does it say in here about him? He finished with 52 career sacks at Alabama, played 11 seasons in the NFL. He, of course, an untimely death at the age of 33 following a car accident, a tragic situation. Here's the kickoff or the kick return record I was talking about at the top. Antonio Perkins. Oklahoma's on here a lot. They have the winning streak record. They have the rushing yards record. Now they have the return touchdown record here. He had 3 in one game. Perkins did the unthinkable in 2003 when he became the first player in NCAA history to score on 3 returns in one game. 84 yards, 74 yards, and 65 yards in a 59-24 win over UCLA. This is one that I could see getting broken, or at least tied. It is unusual. It's not going to be easy. Obviously, it hasn't been broken in 40 years or whatever it was when this game was played. But I could see this one getting broken at some point, couldn't you? This one seems more attainable than some of the other ones, right? Like the winning streak, 47. I don't see anybody ever beating that. 470 something yards rushing per game. I don't see anybody beating that ever. I could see maybe somebody beating this here. You know, maybe you're on a team with a really bad defense, but a really good kick returner, you know? So you're giving up a ton of touchdowns, which means they have to kick the ball off to you. You know, maybe you end up, you give up 7 or 8 touchdowns, That's 7 or 8 opportunities for a kick return. I could see this one maybe getting tied or broken at some point. It's not as unbreakable as some of these others on this list. Marcus Allen, to me, this is less about the record that he set and more about just thinking back to just how good Marcus Allen really was. Again, this happened a little bit sort of before I sort of fully jumped into college football. This was in the mid to late 80s. And again, not a lot of games on TV back then. You obviously didn't have the internet like we have now where you could easily obtain information about things that weren't on TV or whatever. Obviously, you knew who Marcus Allen was. You knew the name. But I sort of got more familiar with Marcus Allen, just like with Barry Sanders, during his pro career than I did during his college career. But listen to some of these numbers here. Allen rushed for more than 200 yards in 8 of the 11 games in 1988. It's same year as the Barry Sanders broke all those records. He finished with 2,342 yards on his way to winning the Heisman Trophy. But what really jumps out is that Allen started the season with 5 straight 200-yard games. That's the record they're referring to here as unbreakable. 5 games in a row with 200 rushing yards or more, a streak that still continues 44 years later, as the article points out. Marcus Allen is one of the most accomplished football players ever. Listen to this. He won a national championship in college. He won the Heisman Trophy in college. He won the Super Bowl in the NFL. He won the Super Bowl MVP award in the NFL, and he won the NFL MVP award in the NFL. The only player ever to have accomplished all of those things. He's obviously a pro football and a college football Hall of Famer. Marcus Allen, one of the best to ever do it. Patrick Mahomes, this is another one I knew about. A legendary game here. Patrick Mahomes versus Baker Mayfield, Texas Tech versus Oklahoma back in the early days of the Lincoln Riley tenure at Oklahoma. But this was a crazy game. This is kind of the game that people point to as sort of the benchmark typical Big 12 game during this era of like the mid 2010s. Offensive track meet and not a lot of defense. This is sort of how the Big 12 developed that reputation, which has gone away a little bit recently, to be fair, in recent years. But mid to late 2010s, the Big 12 was known as sort of a throw the ball 60 times a game, score 50 points, and give up 40 points type of league. And this game epitomized that. 66-59, your final score in this one. Playing with a separated shoulder and a fractured left wrist, Patrick Mahomes set an FBS record with 819 yards of total offense in one game against, of course, a Lincoln Riley defense. Is anyone shocked by that? No. Not in the least. He completed 52 of 88 passes for 734 yards and 5 touchdowns. He also rushed for another 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. So 7 touchdowns total. And what is this? 820 yards of total offense by one human being in a football game. And of course, Lincoln Riley couldn't figure anything out defensively to even slow him down in that one. Baker Mayfield, the opposing quarterback in that game, who went on to have a really good career at Oklahoma, interestingly enough, had transferred to Oklahoma from Texas Tech, by the way. I don't know how many of you might remember that. He threw for 545 yards in that game. 7 touchdowns, and of course, Oklahoma did win that game. The teams combined for an FBS record 1,708 yards of total offense. 1,708 yards of total offense. Unbelievable. I guess it's possible that could be beaten at one day at a game at some point, but boy, that's going to be difficult to do. And here's a record from Alabama and Nick Saban. This is the record for most wins in a row over unranked teams. Alabama's Nick Saban team won 104 games in a row over unranked teams. They lost to an unranked team his first year at Bama, 2007, Louisiana Monroe. I know for sure may have lost to some others his first year at Bama. But from 2008 all the way up through, I believe, 2021, they didn't lose to a single unranked team. An unbelievable record. Texas A&M was the team that broke that streak. Broke another streak too. You remember the whole Saban's undefeated against his assistants speech that we used to have to be force fed all the time? Well, that streak ended the same time this wins against unranked teams streak ended, with a 21-14 loss in Tuscaloosa. No, that was at Texas A&M. The Tuscaloosa loss was Louisiana Monroe. But yeah, they lost to Texas A&M to end that streak in Jimbo Fisher. But 104 wins in a row against unranked opponents, I doubt that's going to be broken. And then they list some other sort of just odd records down here at the end. Florida has scored a point in 461 straight games. This is a record I was familiar with. Florida fans will talk about this one a lot. They haven't been shut out at all, not a single time in the last 461 games. There have been a couple of games where it came close, where they almost got shut out. There was a game recently, a few years back, where they were shut out late into the fourth quarter. They were losing by 20 or 30 points, whatever it was. They had the ball, and they kicked a field goal at the end of the game for no reason. I mean, they were losing by 20 or 30. You say, why are you kicking a field goal? Why not just go for it? Well, they kicked the field goal to keep their streak alive was the only reason. And there's another record on here we're going to get to in a minute where they're sort of twisting things to keep a record alive. Andre Ware passed for 517 yards and 6 touchdowns one time in the first half. 517 yards and 6 touchdowns. I don't know if anyone's ever going to do that again. Michigan's Mike Hart had 1,005 consecutive carries without a fumble, running back from Michigan from back in the mid to late 2000s. Here's the other one I was talking about that it's a record that kind of is finagled a little. Nebraska has sold out every home football game since 1962. While technically this is true, there's a lot of rumors about this record here, and I kind of believe the rumors. The rumor is that there's a boosters club or something associated with Nebraska that every Friday before a home game will buy up all of the unused tickets so that officially the game is a sellout. However, if you look at like aerial shots of Nebraska stadiums, there are plenty of home games where the stadium was not full. It's sort of a trick to keep this streak going. I'm not going to knock Nebraska for doing that. It's kind of a cool talking point for them to have. And let's be honest, they don't have anything else to talk about. The mid 1990s were a long time ago. Alabama won a record 27 straight games against SEC opponents from 1976 to 1980. That one could potentially be broken, maybe. Maybe. Georgia came close. They won 20-something in a row, but not 27. East Carolina's Dominic Davis completed 36 consecutive passes in a game in 2011. How about a Georgia record for you? Who holds the record for most turnovers in a game? That would be Georgia. 13 turnovers in a 48-6 loss to Georgia Tech at Bobby Dodd Stadium in 1951. Zeke Bratkowski threw 8 interceptions, and the Bulldogs lost 5 fumbles. 8 interceptions and 5 fumbles lost for an NCAA record. 13 turnovers for the mighty Georgia Bulldogs back in 1951. I'll post a link to the article. You can go through and read some of these other kind of interesting ones if you want. But anyway, I came across that the other day, and some of that was interesting to me. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. Let me know down below which of those records you think is most likely to be broken at some point, or if there's any of those records that you feel just will never be broken. Let me know. Anyway, appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.